Welcome back. So today I'm going to talk about why it takes on average about 3 years to stabilize an apartment complex. So for those new to the channel, I own two apartment complexes, a 26 unit and a 20 unit apartment complex. I bought my 26 unit apartment complex in August of 2021, and I bought my 20 unit apartment complex in May of 2022. So most of the deals that I get are all off market using my direct mailing campaign, and typically they're C class, so they're over 20 years old, and they're huge value add deals. So for my 26 unit, when I bought it, I believe 24 out of 26 units were occupied. The average rent was around 350 per door, and the market rent once renovated is around 700 to 750. So right out the gate, if you can double the rents, you know that you can essentially double the value of the apartment complex after doing some renovations to make it really nice, really new, really clean, really modern. So so you take over the apartment complex, and I bought it. 24 out of 26 was occupied. When I took over, automatically out the gate, I think I had about maybe 5 to 6 tenants just leave. So I went from, what is that, 24 up to about 18 units. And, because we were renovating the units and the rents were kind of low anyways, it's just very common when we take over apartment complex because the tenants know that as a new landlord, most likely you're going to raise the rents. The tenants know that they've been getting a good deal for a couple of years because the prior landlord, the prior owner didn't really raise the rents, right? They just were self managing it, and it's a lot of work to have to, raise the rents and bring in new tenants and show it. So I get it. You don't want to raise the rents, and they're paying. Then why rock the boat? And the prior owner bought it at a low cost basis, so he wasn't probably very motivated to want to raise the rents and do any extra work. So, anyways, when you take over, tenants will leave because most of them are month to month, and they know that new landlord's going to come in. They're going to raise the rents. We're going to start renovations, and things will get more expensive, right? And then a lot of times the tenants don't want to deal with the renovation noise. And then another thing too is some people just take advantage of the situation. Take advantage of the situation. Like for example, they can get away of not paying rent for like a month, and they know they're going to get a 15-day eviction notice, and at that point they just leave before they get evicted, and they basically just got away with some free rent, and they'll move somewhere else. So this is actually very common when you do value add real estate. Like when you take over, people are going to stop paying, people are going to leave, so your occupancy might be like maybe two vacant, and then after a month or two you might be at like 10 vacant, which is where I kind of averaged and hovered around, to be honest. So, basically, I had two units to renovate, and then I had another, what is it, 8 units become vacant. So at that point, we would just renovate those units and make them the premium units, assuming that they were in bad condition. If they were in decent condition, then we wouldn't really do a heavy renovation. We would just kind of do your typical, touch up, paint, replace one or two things here and there. Like maybe the bathtub needs to be replaced, maybe the carpet needs to be ripped out, and put LVP flooring. Maybe the kitchen cabinets need to be repainted. But for the most part, it wasn't really anything major. It was just kind of like we call it a moderate turn. And the moderate turn, kept the kitchen for the most part, and typically cost around maybe $2,000 to $5,000, versus the full renovation would be around $10,000 to $12,000 of everything brand new, new kitchen, new flooring, new paint, new bathroom, new everything. Right, it looks like a brand new A class apartment complex. So we would assess, and I didn't like having 10 vacants, but at least with 16 units occupied, I was probably averaging around $8,000 to $10,000 a month in income, roughly. So, that kind of helped maintain my expenses, cover, whatever costs. I was kind of like breaking even, maybe slightly negative some months. Some months I'm making a little money, but money gets reinvested back to renovation. But why the contractor likes, having 10 vacant units is it's economies of scale, right? So when they replace a kitchen, they can replace 5 units and added their whole brand new kitchen in, right? And once those 5 kitchens are done, they'll paint all the 5 units. So they just hired the subcontractor to do all the painting. They had the subcontractor to do all the bathrooms, subcontractor to do all the flooring, right? And then at the end, my property manager would, do a final walkthrough, have a punch list about things that need to be fixed or touched up on. General contractor would come in, they touch it up, and now the unit's ready to go. So from my experience, it's always done in batches of five. So once 5 units were done, then um, we would try to rent those out. Or sometimes maybe the existing tenants, they want to upgrade from the older unit into a newer unit and pay a higher rent. And then that would create more units to become vacant, right? So, if you have a tenant move from an older unit to a newer unit, you now have to renovate that older unit. Or if a new tenant comes in and takes a new unit, then now you rented it out. So after they finish five, then they work on the next five, right? And then at that point, they work on the next five and rinse and repeat the process, right? So what's nice about renovating apartments is it's basically like copy and paste. So how you renovate, like my apartment only had like three types of units. There's some studios, mostly one bedroom, one bath, and then some were two bedroom, one bath. But literally, once you designed like one unit, so we actually reconfigured the kitchen, the ones that we ripped out to make it more open, more spacious, more countertop. So once you kind of done one unit, you just copy and paste it to the other units. So it gets easier for the contractors as well, right? Because they've done one, they know what you expect, same materials, same layout, same design. So it just becomes copy and paste. So my contractor will then rent the next 5 units, and then at that point, just continue the process, right? And slowly you churn and churn and churn, and you have a brand new tenant base, and all the units are renovated and rented out. So, fast forward to today, I have, 24 out of 26 units occupied. We're renovating the last unit. That one, once it's renovated, it's a full renovation of new kitchen, new everything. Once that's done, it'll be rented out, and then we have a studio that's actually rent ready, and we're just trying to rent that out right now. So, we started in, I think, June of 2022. So I had a huge, like, 8 month delay where no renovations were happening because the general contractor was backed up on the last project. But, I didn't really mind because I was, getting $10,000 a month. We really didn't rock the boat with the tenants, right? We kind of just kept it status quo. And, obviously, if a tenant left, then, my property managers wouldn't fill it because we anticipated renovating it. So, I would get around eight to $10,000. Once June of 2022 hit, that's when we started renovations. And, fast forward till, end of September 2023. Um, so what is that? It's about 13 or about 16 months. So about 1 year, 3 months. 16 months, we were able to basically renovate a good amount of the units, right? I think at least, I don't know the exact numbers, but most of the tenants churned. I mean, we still have some existing tenants that were there from the beginning. I mean, obviously those tenants got new leases at higher rent rate. And then the other units that we did moderate returns on, we got higher rents on. And the brand new units that we fully renovated, we're getting about 700 to 750. I've heard actually up to 800 now because rents are going up. So, so it took about 16 months to roughly, I'd probably say, renovate majority of the units. I know at least like 14 are brand new, right? So that means there's 12 units that either A, we didn't renovate anything, they're the existing tenants, or B, we did like a moderate turn on that unit. So it took me 16 months to basically renovate. Um, so if you kind of do the math, that's averaging about one new full renovation a month. And that's including some moderate turns as well. So that's about how long it takes. So it was taking them about, maybe they're doing about 1 to 2 units a month. And, we would have delays here and there, but that was the typical rate. So, like I said, majority of them we would renovate. And sometimes you're just waiting for supplies, or maybe the contractor is doing another project and you have to wait and they come back. But actually, on the other part, it was a little bit on my fault because I kind of wanted to do renovations in batches, like, because I'm doing three renovation projects simultaneously, so I didn't want to like put too much money into a 26 unit if I need money for my mobile home park or my 20 unit. So I did kind of have them go a little bit slow, but the cadence were keeping about 1 2 units a month, and my intent was, you renovate those units, rent them out, renovate the next units, rent those out, and then you constantly have that cash flow. So there was a point where I had like 5 rent ready units, and thankfully my property managers are good, and they ended up renting out like 5 in just 1 month. So I literally went from like 19 units rented out to like 24 out of 26 units rented out. Um, so yeah, so now all the tenants there, they're on new leases. They're either new tenants, long-term leases. Whoever's existing there, whoever's remaining, they're still there. We just locked them on a new lease at a higher rate. So this is how long it takes to stabilize an apartment complex, right? So this took about a little over 2 years. It is a 26 unit, and like you said, you're having a new tenant base. They're better tenants that can afford it. They like it because it's nice units. They know the new landlord's coming in. They're taking care of things. I'm fixing the exterior. I'm fixing the interior. I'm fixing the fence. I'm actually taking care of the property, right? I'm not like a slumlord. So because they know that, you get higher quality tenants. The bad tenants are the ones that weed themselves out, right? They're the ones that left immediately. So just expect it, right? And the same thing happened for my 20 unit. Like when I bought my 20 unit, I think 15 out of 20 were rented out. There were two units that were burned down. Like one unit was completely burned down, required full renovation. The one next to it was, pretty bad as well. It was basically unlivable. And we had three that, weren't too terrible, but required some renovation. But for this one, the location was in like kind of a downtown area. Unfortunately, the prior owner was kind of letting homeless people kind of linger around that area. So, some of the tenants, they would let the homeless people stay over for service, if you know what I mean, and read between the lines. But, homeless people are just kind of used to lingering around that apartment complex. It's a great location. It was in downtown. You could walk to like an event center. So, it just attracted the wrong crowd. So for this one, I had a high vacancy. When I bought 15 out of 20. When I took over, immediately, we had like a huge bed bug outbreak because of someone was letting homeless people in and their unit was nasty. So we had to evict that tenant that basically was bringing in homeless people because of the bed bugs. In order to fumigate it, you had to take all your stuff out of the cupboards, the closet, and put it in the middle, cover it. But at that point, you might as well just move out because you've done so much work to move all your stuff already. So between getting rid of some bad apples, between the bed bug infestation, between having to people stop paying, I went from like 15 out of 20 all the way down to like I think 7 out of 20 occupied. So I lost like eight tenants immediately. And it's okay. Like it sucks in the time because my cash flow went from like I think I was getting like maybe 5,000, and it went all the way down to like 2-3,000, and that 2-3,000 was just enough to cover my mortgage, and then whatever expense I had on top of that, I had to come out of pocket, right? So utilities, any repairs and maintenance on top of that, property management, property tax, insurance. I had to come out of pocket, but we had all the bad tenants for me, right? Like the ones I didn't want there anyways, and we did have some tenants that still stayed that weren't that great. Um, and what we started doing was I had like 13 units to renovate. So I just, got this one guy. He had his team. Um, they were a little bit behind schedule. And then, the general contractor would subcontract it out to subcontractors and they didn't do a good job. So he ended up firing all subcontractors and said, you know what, I'm just going to work on this by myself and renovate all these units by myself. So literally one guy did the majority renovations in my 20 unit apartment complex. And he said that like it would take them faster. Like it would probably take them on average like maybe 8 to 10 days to fully renovate a unit. If it didn't require a new kitchen and whatnot, but like touching up the kitchen, repainting, new flooring, new bathtub. Like it would take him about 8 days on average to do it, and he would just do it himself. And then, um, basically as he started finishing the units up, he would work on um, the units that need more renovations. But the units that just need like paint, some touch up here and there, we had a handyman who was like a lot cheaper. So like, he would just repaint the units, touch up things here and there, like to make it rent ready to rent it out. So basically, because I had like 13 units I need to rent out and it was a hard money loan, I was under the pressure. So I would actually um, give move-in specials to incentivize people. And this was during the holiday season, which is the hardest time to rent out. Like you're talking October, November, December, January, because most people want to move in before the holidays to be situated. So, because I was desperate to rent out units because I was on a hard money loan that was due in 12 months, I kind of gave concessions, but it did, attract some The downside is that I did fill up the units fast, but the downside is like the quality of tenant you have may not be as good. Like two of those tenants that we brought in through the move-in special, we ended up having to evict them, and they basically did Sharpie art all over the walls, and they punched holes in the drywall, and ended up costing me $700 per unit to repair. So I took their security deposit, evicted them, and then now we're going after them in collections to get back the rest of the repairs. Right. So that's the trade-off, and but I kind of knew that by going fast that would happen, and it did. And so as we start to lease up the units, so today it's at 18 out of 20, so we have almost a brand new tenant base. There are some tenants who are like getting really low rents, like they're like literally like $200 for rent, and we're charging around 500 to 550, depending on the time of the year. It's like 495, 500, 550, just depending on how they negotiate it. But we still have some tenants there that pay 200, and they've been playing by the rules, so we didn't really want to rock the boat. But now that we're at 18 out of 20 and occupancy's high and the unit's nicely renovated, like we repainted the exterior, um, basically gave it a facelift. We painted everything. Most units have been renovated, so now at this point we might reach out to those tenants and say, hey, like maybe it's time to raise their rents, because they've been here, they've been getting 200, they know, so we can they know been getting discount, they've been good. But now that, I basically did a cash out refinance, it's stabilized now. Like even if we were to raise the rents and they leave, I would still have like 17 out of 20 units occupied. That's still enough cash flow so that I can bring in a new tenant who maybe is paying closer to market rent, right? And I have to renovate that unit a little bit. So that's what I mean by, stabilizing the apartment is a process. Like, in the beginning, you don't want to get rid of the tenants who are, playing by the rules and they're paying, even though they're like, below market rent. Like as long as you can have them there, because you want some income going in. If you want to, you could like raise the rents slightly and get them on a new lease, because they know that you're going to be like fixing it up and making it nice, and then they enjoy it too, right? Because if your tenant base increases, it's better. Like now, like I remember my contractor who was fixing my 20 was like, yeah, man, there's some like really sketchy, seedy people in the apartment complex. They're letting homeless people in to stay over. They're, one guy's like smoking inside the unit and doing all this stuff. And then he'd kind of be my ears and eyes on the unit because he's there all day renovating it. So he knows who's good, who's bad. And, he just said that like, yeah, eventually all the bad people weed themselves out. And we found them, right? Like we eventually, evicted the people who were, smoking in the unit, or they would, let homeless people stay over at night, or let other friends, like we evicted one guy and then he ended up staying with his buddy in another unit. And we just said, hey, like this is a warning. Like you cannot do that. If we see that again, we'll evict you as well. So what I mean is like the people who don't play by the rules eventually weeds themselves out, and they know that like you mean business, right? Like they know that you've been evicting people. It's a small community, they talk. So, but they also know that you're fixing up the units, you're bringing in a new tenant base. It's nicer, it's cleaner, the new tenant base, and it's better. And he was like, yeah, the new tenants are great. Like they're younger, they work, they play by the rules, they don't let homeless people stay over, they don't blast music. They're very respectful. They have auto pay. They just like the area because it's in a good location. It's in the path of progress. It's near an event center. So it's kind of like a little hipster, trendy area on top of a hill, right? So that's the process it takes, and it's a lot of work. I've been basically breaking even or slightly losing money on both my apartments for the longest time. But now that it's like, I have 24 out of 26 in one, 18 out of 20 out of two, that's about what, 90% occupancy. I'm grossing about $26,000 a month, and my expense is $16,000 a month. So I'm netting $10,000 a month. So literally in about a year and a half to 2 years, I own two apartment complexes that I fully renovated, that have a new tenant base in it that's better. The rents are at market value. I don't have to worry about capex for a while because I just renovate these units. Unless the tenant trashes it, then that's out of my control. And then the only renovation I have to do moving forward is if like an existing tenant left, and then that existing tenant, that unit needed some renovation, whether it's a major one or just a moderate turn. So, that's what I mean by patience. Like you have to be really patient to renovate the units, rent it out, and slowly build a new tenant base. And it's a very gradual process, right? Where maybe 3 to 5 units you renovate and rent out, the next 5 units, renovate, rent out, and there's gonna be a point where your occupancy is very low, but that's okay, right? Like, because like you said, just view it as the people that leave are tenants you don't want anyways, right? Their rent's cheap, they might be sketchy, they might be seedy, so it's okay, right? It's literally okay that they leave and expect it. So, hopefully you got some perspective as to what's it like and what's it take to do value add real estate, what it's like to really own apartment complexes and renovate them, and the ups and downs that you go through as tenants, leave and then come in, right? So, like I said, it took me like about 2 years to stabilize my 46 unit portfolio to 90% occupancy, majority of units renovated. So hopefully you found value from this video and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.